Hey everyone, this is Ari from Heavyocity, and welcome back again to an episode of The Click Track, a podcast about composing and the tech behind it. And again today, this is one of our mini episodes about the things we love. I'm here with my co-host, Jason Graves. How's it going, man?
What's going on, Ari?
Hope everything's going great down there on the East Coast.
Oh, come on. Yeah, we're both on the East Coast. You're just Northeast Coast. I'm not quite as East Coast.
Anyway, so this is, without further ado, the things we love. All right, so for today's episode, I chose the thing that I always use on every track I write in some form or another, the Moog Minitaur, which is an amazing piece of gear. And Jason, what piece did you choose today?
Well, as it so happens, Ari, I also chose a Moog, the Subsequent 37.
I wish I had one of those. The Minitaur is two tiny little pieces of it. So yeah, the Minitaur. And the reason I chose it is because it is so unbelievably versatile for such a small desktop piece of gear. It has an amazing low end. It's really aggressive if it wants to be. It's really subtle if it wants to be. And today I have some examples that I have not in any way pre-planned, but just happen to have right here for you to hear, Jason.
Oh, excellent.
Perfect. I have a little ostinato line that I wrote. And then, kind of like the Hans Zimmer Camp does, I'm supporting it with the Moog Minitaur. A little trick for composition today. A lot of times in scores, in film music, in video game music, you'll hear a lot of synths that are supporting the orchestra, whether or not you actually recognize that it's there or not. Especially on the low end, you can have a synth that's just pumping along underneath if you have a chunky staccato part. And it just really helps bring that track to the next level. So check it out. Here is the full orchestra. By full orchestra, I mean just the strings, with the Minitaur in the bottom end.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just got this chunky. That's the only word I could think of. I mean, it's a bass synth.
Yeah. And what else have you got on that? Like what EQ?
Literally nothing. This is just,
exactly.
A VST, or it's from Novo staccato strings. And the bass is just supported with this, let me play the orchestra without the bass, and you'll notice how the bottom kind of doesn't really have that same impact. So here we go. Right, it's got that bite from the strings, and it's got a little bit of the thump from the staccato basses, but it doesn't have that like really, really thumpy, chunky bottom. So, adding in the Minitaur, and one of the things that I did here was I opened up the filter a little bit to add some modulation, so it's not just a low bump, 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 bump. You hear the growl start to come in as the track progresses. So here's just the Minitaur playing that part. It's just monstrous sounding.
And what amazes me, you get that kind of a sound from this little innocuous box that the Minitaur is in. And it actually reminds me a lot of the Sub 37, because I think there's a lot of similar shared architecture there.
Right.
And what seems super cool is it just like works. It's almost like it's already compressed. It's already EQ'd. You open that filter up, it's already got some distortion on it. And it's just so immediate and present and sits so well in the mix, right?
Yeah, it really does. I mean, it's a mono output from the synth, so it's smack dead center.
I know.
Even though it's got multiple voices chorusing. Actually, since you mentioned the drive of the filter, I'd love to play the example of some of the other things that I do with it. to
Oh, yeah,
play a
please.
line underneath with, the filter opening up fully, and you just really get that nasty growl that comes out. So here's the Minitaur playing a sustained part with that cutoff knob turning all the way up and then back down.
Stank face. Yeah, gnarly. It is.
There's something about that drive on that synth, right?
Yeah, and so my example is from something that does not actually do the drive thing as much. But I know the Sub 37 has some like a fold back feature or something. You remember where you could take like the headphone out and put it into like the aux input and like overdrive the oscillators going into the filter to like really distort the filter. It's basically with the Sub 37, they did that just on a knob, which gets pretty nasty as well. But since you just did your swell, let me play mine. Now this is more, it's just the Sub 37, but it's just like a, more legato kind of thing. There's a little bit of swelling in there, but I think I don't go past like 12 o'clock. Just.
Oof. Super cool.
And I love how it can be so clean and smooth.
Yeah.
Yet if you open the filter more, like you did in your example, like super dirty and nasty and distorted.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I actually was using the Sub 37 on a song for one project, like on a Wednesday. And I wanted this really pure kind of 70s almost sounding lead.
Cool.
So here's one part of it, just completely dry. It's a little. And there's something to be said for that just musical filter, right? Like I was playing it live, but kind of moving the filter like I was a flute player or something, like to make it expressive.
Right.
And so you get that sort of push and pull. But what I ended up doing ultimately was I ran it through my Eventide space pedal and through the Zen delay, which is this like amazing stereo tube delay. So this was the kind of final version. Which was like exactly what I heard in my head, right? You take that, the signal that's super mono, but then you can do all these things with it. And the funny part of the story is, so I built that patch. It's nothing fancy, but I built it on a Wednesday. And then on Thursday, I was working on another cue for a different project, and I wanted a bass. And I pulled up the Sub 37. It was still on this patch, of course. It just, it was sitting there because I hadn't touched it. And I thought, ooh, I need to save it. I need to do something. And I just hit like a couple of octaves down on my keyboard. And that was what you ended up hearing for the first bass example that I played. It was actually the same patch. So it can equally do creamy and smooth, like up at C4 or C5. Then you drop it down like to C2. And it's just shaking the rafters, literally, of my house.
Right.
When you play those big, low, open. It's just pure, raw Moog. I mean, it's that sound, right?
Right, and that's actually, that's one of the limitations of the Minitaur, right? Like the Sub 37, you get the full range Excuse me, my voice cracked.
You get the full range.
You get the full range of the key range, the range of the range on the synth. But the Minitaur was really, it's just the low frequencies. Let's take the bass. Let's make a bass synth that does nothing but bass really, really well. And I think they really nailed it. I mean, it just sounds wicked.
And I always assumed it was called the Minitaur because they were basically doing like a small form factor of Taurus pedals. Is that correct?
Exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly
Cool.
right.
Yeah.
Is they basically wanted to make a desktop version of what the classic Taurus was. Because who wants to play bass with their feet?
Organ players. Jimmy Smith could probably play the mess out of some Taurus pedals.
Exactly. Well, cool. So, one of the things that I really love, if I had to pick one thing from the Minitaur and why I find it so versatile, even for such a simple mono bass, it's not really mono, it's got two oscillators, is the filter. It's what makes it, right? The oscillators, the Moog oscillators are brilliant to begin with. They sound huge, but that filter is just open that cutoff. It drives, growls. It does everything you want it to do out of an analog synth in such a greatly brilliant way.
Smooth, right? That's what comes to mind when I think of any of those Moog sounds, like smooth and creamy. Even when it's distorting, it's still like smooth and creamy. There's nothing nasty about it.
Exactly. Man, and the Sub 37, it's the Minitaur is like a tiny little piece of what that thing can do, and it's such a cool synth.
It's funny because I almost got a Minitaur like 4 or 5 times, but I think I got the Sub 37 just because I like the idea of having the keyboard, kind of being able to go over and mess with it. I mean, it's the Subsequent 37, so it's got a couple of extra little features, a little more headroom. Does the Minitaur have 2 oscillators plus the sub oscillator on the first oscillator, or is it just the 2?
It's just the 2, and you can detune them, you can pitch them. You get 3 options. You get a square, a sawtooth, and a sine, I believe.
Well, it's kind of a no-brainer for me if you're looking for bass stuff, because, I mean, the list price is less than $1,000 easily. I don't know exactly, but like $600 or something for...
Yeah, I think it's like 500 or 600.
Yeah. I mean, for authentic analog, the filter and everything. Yeah. I love them. I love them both.
It's one of those things I love. Hey, there's the name of the podcast. That's our podcast today. Short and sweet, to the point. So, thanks for joining us. Please subscribe. Don't forget to click subscribe. Join us next time. If you have some gear that you love and you'd love to hear us talk about or would recommend to us to get and check out, feel free to write in. Let us know. Thanks again. See you next time.